Hello, this is Carolyn Cushing of Soul Path Sanctuary, and I'm coming to you around the April full moon. I follow the moons from the new through the full to the dark. And we began this month, March 24th, exploring issues of power. Power over, control, but also the power from within. Each one of us has unique power from within to bring out. And then we bring out our unique power from within to work with power with and work collaboratively with others to serve the good of the whole. So we began with power, and now the full moon is because it's a power. We were walking the path of the emperor. The lunar astrology brought us to pay attention to the emperor path. And now the full moon comes 10:35 tonight, Eastern time, United States, overnight, full moon. And we're having an encounter with justice. So the emperor is meeting justice. And when I looked at some interesting numerology, some patterns in the cards, I found this, what I'm calling a lunar diamond. And this is 4 cards that contain our energy and contain it to build it so we can have a revelation on the full moon. And I have a slideshow for you, so I'm going to bring that up. Screen share happening here. Okay, we're going to start the slideshow. This is our Emperor meets Justice. So let me just tell you a little bit about the Emperor and Justice, or remind you, or give you my take. And my take today is inspired by the Raziel Tarot by Rachel Pollack and Robert Place. And the inspiration for this is the Jewish tradition and lore and myth and midrash, which is teaching that continues on. And much of the teaching of the Raziel Tarot comes from Rachel Pollack's own midrash of Jewish tradition and tarot together. And this version of the emperor is interesting. I love there are 2 figures. So it's giving us a range of meaning. All tarot cards have a range of meaning. And this is showing us 2 kinds of emperors, which are the stand-in for them are the Pharaoh of Egypt and Moses, who led the Israelites out of Egypt. And I'm going to talk about them just as types. I'm not really talking about history. I'm talking about them as types. So we have the Pharaoh, who is the autocratic, authoritarian leader. He's operating with power over. He, is holding the Israelites as slaves. He rules by edict, and he is power over. He also, he has a lush background, his jewels. This kind of emperor accumulates wealth for themselves. And they're like, I alone. The pharaohs were actually, they said they were the gods. So they were speaking as the gods. In contrast to that, we have Moses, representing all different kinds of leaders from history. Also the Pharaoh, all different kinds of autocratic leaders from history. So Moses, he actually shares power. He has people with him. His brother is the high priest, serving spiritual needs. His sister Miriam leads singing and helps them find water. So he's part of a team. And of course, they're doing this in service to God, to Yahweh, who's called them, serving a greater purpose beyond themselves. They don't have much. You can see he's wearing sandals and a simple cloak. And what they have, they share. And this kind of emperor is a servant of the people, of the divine that they serve. And these happen to be masculine figures. Remember, I'm talking about types. And we could have female emperors as well, both positive and negative side. So this emperor is having an encounter with justice. And justice is the archetype of both spiritual and social justice, also fairness, cause and effect. What you do comes back to you. Truth, right order. And the image here, this is really one of my favorite versions of justice. This is the Shekinah. It's the divine feminine who stays with the Jewish people no matter where they are. When the temple is destroyed, she goes into exile with them. And she is standing here at the Sabbath table. And this is the ritual that happens every Friday night. candles are lit, and it's a renewal of time. It's a practice led by women of the household. And here you have the Shekinah and doing that candle lighting at the table. She's not in the palace, the temple, the place of wealth. She's with the people. So you can see she kind of aligns more with the Moses figure. And we are having now, the emperor is coming to stand before justice and seeing how the emperors, how they're serving justice. And there's also another factor here in my looking at the numerology, because we have 4 of the emperor added to 11 of justice, brings us to the devil, card 15. So we are in this time of pandemic and collapse of global systems. We are having a lot of authoritarian power rising, also the alternatives coming and people creating different kinds of structures. So we are in this time, you know, the emperor meeting justice brings us to the devil. And the devil is the archetype of, it can be oppression, greed, addiction. It can also be constriction. In the iconic image, the figures are held in chains. And it is also a card of shadow. The shadow, the things we don't want to look at. And of course, when I think about the shadow influence, listening to Jungians, the shadow is actually a place we go and we learn something about ourselves and we integrate it so we can grow. So the devil really challenges us. The devil puts us in systems. And what he's done here is he's kind of trapped Adam and Eve. He said, oh, here you are in this place. You can't leave it. Don't leave it. So they don't learn anything else about the wider world. They aren't connected to other people. In a funny way, it's a mirror reflection of many of us, not all of us, many of us are in our homes constricted. And of course, those of us who have to go out, they are facing the breakdown of our systems not necessarily serving people, our healthcare system in the United States not being invested in, healthcare workers are facing crises and shortages, so they are confronting the devil in a different way. And the devil calls us to pay attention and to examine and to grow. And something about the Raziel Tarot, out of the Jewish tradition, the devil is not all powerful. The devil can be bested. There's a story of how the wise King Solomon, he was almost tricked by the devil, but then he came and reclaimed his seat and the devil was ejected. The devil's a little bit more of a trickster, or even has a little bit of a buffoon quality. He seems to have a lot of power. He seems to mesmerize us, but he can be removed. So this is the kind of the upper level, the tip of the iceberg. This is what we are perhaps seeing in the world now. And the tarot comes to offer us wisdom and invite us to walk a different path. And as part of that different path, we go to a little more numerology, because the devil, 1 + 5 = 6. 6 is the number of the lovers. And the lovers here are at the bottom of the triangle. We see the top. This is what's apparent. This is the bigger news. But the undercurrent, or you can think about it as an iceberg, you know, the tip, but the undercurrent is love, the lovers, which is an image of, here in this image, we can see it. It's the couple, the people, it happens to be Adam and Eve, coming together. They're standing together and they're connected to the divine. They're looking up to the divine. And what's shown here is Adam and Eve, they have to leave the garden. They've eaten from the tree of good and the knowledge of good and evil. And so they can't stay in the perfect Eden. And they're going into this new territory, this new world. In fact, could there be resonance of what we are doing, what's happening, we're at home, what's going to happen afterwards? We are gonna go into a new place. And the Raziel is that angel come from the divine. It's offering them a gift. It's actually the book of Raziel, which contains the information of all that will happen. So it offers it to them to have some guidance. That's a particular inspiration for this deck. But it's also, to me, it's showing, the divine is there with you as you're going on this new pathway, the pathway of the unknown, and their support for you. So the diamond and how it flows. We take the bottom, the love, as what to ground ourselves in. In this full moon time, our reflections, how we're thinking about our power and looking at power being exercised in the world in positive and negative ways. We are grounded in love. That's the invitation. And so if we start from this place and then we move on up, we move up to the emperor, we move up to like, how are we emperors? How are we bringing our power from within and connecting it with others for power with to help the good of the whole? And here, what are some contemporary emperors that you know about in your life, in your community? And just for example, in my community, the schools decided to close or had to close on a Friday. And kids went home from school, and many children have the free lunch. That's an important meal for them during that day. The school's closed on Friday. Robin, who runs the East Hampton Community Center, was open on Monday with a program to feed the children. They would come, she had a plan to give them lunch. This is partly because there's a summer program that she was instituting. So there was some forethought in her part in programs that have been set up. And you can also see it in the actions of those who are working in the medical system to bring us what we need. You can see it in the proactive leaders closing, nonprofit organizations closing down before even state edicts or stepping up to be offering services. So grounded in love, moving along to bring the power from within to offer it to the whole. And then we go to the devil. Like, how do we we're in this moment, and how do we keep growing from this moment? I can look at what are some of the failings in our system. Why is it that people cannot get paid sick leave, stay home, that would help create health for all? Why is it that there are states fighting with each other to get needed medical equipment where there could be better coordination? Why is it that there's a higher incidence of death for African Americans in this coronavirus is what we're finding in the United States? This is go back to look at our history, not to take it personally, but to see analytically like what exists and how can we fix the system? And then within ourselves, what are we doing? What's our power from within that we're not bringing forth? What constricts us in that? Where are places we need to grow and act in better ways? So our looking at our power is a way to grow and be humble, by seeing our mistakes and use the mistakes for growing. And then from there, we go into being active in renewing justice. And this, justice isn't a place we arrive at and we're done. We can really see that life is a circle, not a line. And we can work spiritually to do our full moon practice, to do rituals. We are going into these times of holidays for many people. How do we use that to spiritually bring justice more into our lives and in our inner world? And then we use that energy, that support, to then act in the wider world to bring justice in the immediate and also in the longer term for what we're seeing. So that is the lunar diamond and our time of justice. And on the Soul Path Sanctuary blog, you can find listing out, spelling out of practices that you can do, from moon bathing to looking back at readings and connecting the Emperor and Justice card. There are reflection questions that you can do card work with. And I hope you take some time tonight. A couple nights around the full moon, you can do that. I don't think it's very strict on the timeline. We're in this whole moon cycle of paying attention to to power and justice. And so to kind of conclude our looking at justice, I just want to offer this invocation, asking justice to be with us. We welcome justice into the center of our hearts, our minds, our spirits, as we travel this month in a time of pandemic. May the fire of her being inspire us to believe her beauty can shine forth in the world. May the flow of her being purify and release us from wounds that come from the places where she is violated. May the breath of her being pass through us and form on our lips words of wisdom. May the endurance of her being aid us to persist in serving her. May we hear her truth. May we know her balance. May we gather her wisdom. Welcome justice. So I hope justice shines on you over these next days. And just to remind you, visit soulpathsanctuary.com, and I send emails out to remind people about the blog posts and any videos I'm doing. And the practices are spelled out there. And then visit robertmplacetarot.com to learn more about the Raziel Tarot. And travel well under the light of justice.